What is Neville Goddard's hidden law of financial transformation, and why does it hold the power to change how you experience money, wealth, and opportunity forever? This is the mystery we will uncover in this video, revealing how your imagination is not just a dream machine, but the true architect of financial reality. And by the end, you will understand how to turn unseen assumptions into visible income. This is where it begins. The moment you realize that the richest people in the world are not those who work the hardest, but those who have mastered invisible states of consciousness. This is how it unfolds. Neville taught that money follows imagination, the way a shadow follows the body. And once you learn to command the inner scene, the outer must obey. This is where the hidden current flows. Beneath every job, deal, or chance encounter lies an imaginal cause you've either planted or neglected. This is why it matters, because financial struggle is never a punishment from life, but a signal that imagination has been left unguarded. This is where illusion fades, when you stop thinking of money as paper and begin seeing it as condensed imagination, frozen belief in motion. This is the turning point. Understanding that transformation doesn't begin in your wallet, but in your assumptions about who you are. This is where truth breaks through. The poor man and the rich man live side by side within you, and whichever one you inhabit determines your world. This is where the law comes alive. The moment you assume the feeling of already having, the universe rearranges itself to match that inner certainty. This is how power quietly shifts, from chasing opportunities to becoming the vibration that opportunity recognizes. This is the spark of awareness, realizing that imagination is not pretending but creating in advance. This is the deeper secret. Every time you imagine a new financial outcome and feel it as real, you've already altered the unseen structure of events. This is where energy begins to compound. Your repeated assumptions become deposits in the invisible bank of consciousness that eventually yield tangible returns. This is the hidden mechanism. Faith, as Neville defined it, is not hope, but sustained, imaginal conviction. This is where wealth stops being a pursuit and becomes an identity. You no longer reach for abundance, you radiate it. This is where the story changes. What once felt like luck becomes alignment. What once seemed random becomes inevitable. This is the place of rebirth, where imagination replaces effort as your creative currency. This is how transformation feels. A quiet confidence that your outer finances are catching up to your inner riches. This is the promise. You will learn to step beyond chance into deliberate creation, mastering the law that governs all wealth. This is the invitation. Stay through every revelation that follows, because the door to your financial transformation has just opened, and what you're about to discover will forever redefine what it means to be rich. Can you imagine that every financial reality in your life, every bill paid, every debt owed, every windfall received, has been silently drawn from a blueprint that exists only in imagination? This is where it deepens. The realization that money is not earned by effort alone, but organized by unseen assumptions that precede every transaction. This is where the veil lifts. Neville Goddard taught that consciousness is the only reality, and therefore your financial world is merely its reflection. This is where clarity dawns. Every mental picture you accept as true becomes the invisible architecture upon which your outer wealth is built. This is where truth glimmers. There is no economy outside the one you sustain within, no scarcity except the one imagined as real. This is where understanding expands. Wealth responds to your state of being, not your schedule, and no amount of work can override a feeling of lack. This is where the unseen market opens. Your thoughts trade energy, your beliefs trade value, your assumptions trade identity. This is where the alignment begins. When you stop measuring wealth by possessions and start measuring it by the inner certainty of abundance. This is how the illusion collapses. You realize that working harder while assuming poverty multiplies struggle, while imagining richness multiplies opportunity. This is where power shifts. The game changes from pursuit to embodiment, from doing to being. This is where the subtle law operates. What you believe yourself to be financially is the only truth your world will ever mirror back. This is where mastery takes root. You start watching your inner language, catching yourself before thoughts of limitation plant their seeds. This is how reality rearranges. It listens to conviction, not confusion, and obeys the emotional authority of your dominant state. This is where the alchemy happens. The invisible blueprint becomes visible form, one event, one coincidence, one inspired action at a time. This is where cause replaces chance. Every payment received is not random, but the echo of a prior imaginal act. This is where you begin to trust the unseen. You stop forcing outcomes and begin tending to the mental soil from which they grow. This is how peace returns. You understand that imagination, not effort, is the real investment. This is where abundance starts to flow naturally, no longer as a reward for toil, but as the natural reflection of inner wealth. This is where the lesson crystallizes. The hidden law of financial transformation is not about earning, but about embodying. This is where awareness deepens. You now see that every fortune begins invisibly, in the quiet power of belief that refuses to doubt its own prosperity. Picture for a moment that money doesn't answer logic. It answers emotion, and every financial condition you live through is the echo of what you felt most deeply. This is where it begins to reveal itself. Neville Goddard often said that feeling is the secret, for the universe speaks emotion long before it translates into form. This is where the code hides. Your dominant emotion becomes your financial signature, broadcasting wealth or want to everything you meet. This is where awareness pierces through. When you feel gratitude before reason, confidence before evidence, you alter the very script your reality follows. This is where transformation stirs. Your inner climate determines your outer harvest, and emotion is the seed from which every coin grows. This is where truth softens resistance. The more peaceful you're feeling toward money, the easier it flows toward you, like a stream unblocked. This is where the subtle shift happens, when you stop worrying about how money will come and start feeling what it's like to already have it. This is where illusion dissolves, because no emotion is neutral. Every feeling you feed shapes the form of your financial world. This is where you start noticing patterns. The rush of anxiety before a bill, the quiet dread before a payment, the guilt after receiving, and how each emotion sustains a loop of scarcity. This is where mastery begins, choosing emotional consistency over emotional chaos, learning to feel rich even in moments of lack. This is where the inner architect awakens. He builds with the tools of calm expectancy, not desperation. This is where energy reorganizes. It mirrors your emotional atmosphere, rearranging circumstances to match what you habitually feel. This is where liberation dawns. You realize you can rewrite your emotions faster than any balance sheet can change. This is how the law responds, swiftly, faithfully, to the emotional broadcast that never stops playing inside you. This is where you take your power back, no longer reacting to conditions, but creating the feeling that will birth new ones. This is where confidence replaces calculation. You stop asking how much and start declaring how it feels. This is where wealth starts to breathe again. It thrives in the heart of emotional ease. This is how the hidden law speaks. It whispers through feelings that the outer world can't yet see. This is where the promise unfolds. When you maintain the emotional frequency of wealth, all else must rise to meet it. This is where the hidden blueprint becomes clear. You were never chasing money. You were always chasing the feeling that money was meant to mirror. Now consider this. The only way to change your financial world is to substitute a new inner feeling for the one that created the old condition. This is where the hidden lever lies. Neville Goddard revealed that you cannot fight poverty into wealth. You must feel wealth until poverty fades without a struggle. This is where imagination becomes the craftsman. What you hold in consciousness replaces what you once feared, and the new image quietly takes the throne. This is where resistance loses its grip. You stop wrestling with circumstances and begin replacing their emotional roots. This is where the silent exchange happens. The feeling of lack is dismissed, and the feeling of abundance is hired to take its place. This is where inner alchemy begins. The old pattern dissolves not by willpower, but by gentle substitution of belief. This is where the magic of assumption unfolds. You assume the reality of wealth until your senses have no choice but to confirm it. This is where transformation quickens, because you can never destroy energy, only redirect it toward a richer pattern. This is where the inner experiment starts. You catch yourself mid-thought, mid-feeling, and choose the new emotion deliberately. This is how consciousness refines itself. Each substitution is an act of divine creativity, a quiet but powerful declaration that I am now wealthy. This is where you learn precision, because vague feelings produce vague results, but a definite assumption gives definite return. This is where the secret science hides. Each replacement of fear with confidence is a vibrational trade that reshapes reality. This is where you taste freedom. You realize you never needed to struggle with lack. You only needed to stop identifying with it. This is where the old story begins to crumble. What once felt impossible now starts to rearrange effortlessly. This is where faith steps in, not as hope, but as the confident replacement of despair with certainty. This is where cause and effect merge. You no longer wait for change to believe. You believe to initiate change. This is where mastery reveals its elegance. The true magician doesn't banish shadows, he turns on the light. This is where imagination rewards discipline. Your repeated substitutions create new neural, emotional, and spiritual pathways. This is where evidence starts to appear. People respond differently. Doors open, resources multiply. This is where you finally understand Neville's hidden law. Financial transformation is never about addition, it's about substitution. Replacing lack with the living vibration of abundance until nothing else remains. Suppose you discover that the wealth you desire is not waiting to be earned, but waiting to be claimed in imagination first, as if it were already yours. This is where Neville's brilliance shines. He taught that true possession begins not with ownership, but with inner occupancy, the act of moving into the feeling of already having. This is where illusion collapses. You see that the outer world only mirrors what you hold internally, and the bank account merely reflects your inner certainty or lack thereof. This is where the shift feels electric, because the moment you accept the reality of your desire and imagination, a chain of unseen events begins to form around that belief. This is where ownership changes meaning. You stop asking, when will I get it, and start declaring, I have it now. This is where the unseen transaction happens, the moment of inner purchase where belief becomes the currency that buys experience. This is how the law operates. It never waits for proof, it produces proof after assumption. This is where confidence replaces craving. No longer chasing outcomes, you begin living from them. This is where imagination becomes territory. You explore the emotions, details, and sensations of wealth until it feels as natural as breathing. This is where the unseen handshake occurs. The universe responds to occupancy, not request, to conviction, not complaint. This is where you understand divine ownership. What you dare to feel as already yours becomes law in the unseen. This is how subtle creation is. It hides in everyday imagination, how you picture yourself paying, spending, or receiving. This is where transformation matures. You become the person who no longer asks but thanks. This is where your new identity solidifies. You see yourself as one who always has, and life bends to match that vision. This is where resistance fades. The desire no longer burns painfully because you're living inside its fulfillment. This is where timing aligns. Opportunities, ideas, and helpers appear as if summoned by invisible appointment. This is how Neville's hidden power feels. It's quiet, effortless, and absolute, rooted in inner certainty rather than outer validation. This is where you stop waiting. The game of delay ends when you occupy the state of wealth now. This is where the mirror of reality turns. You recognize that all financial improvement is simply imagination catching up to conviction. This is the revelation. True wealth begins not with possession of things, but with possession of yourself in the feeling of already having everything. Envision a world where you stop striving for wealth and instead begin living from it, as if the end has already been achieved and nothing more is required of you. This is where Neville's hidden law turns from theory into transformation. He taught that every desire carries its own fulfillment within it, waiting for you to assume it as done. This is where the pressure dissolves. You no longer beg the universe to change, you inhabit the reality where it already has. This is where the cinematic moment unfolds. Each time you imagine from the end, you collapse the distance between what you want and what already exists. This is where reality obeys its script. The outer world must reflect the inner conclusion you've reached with conviction. This is where doubt begins to fade, because when you live from the end, uncertainty becomes irrelevant. The story is already written. This is where faith finds its footing. It no longer asks when, it declares now. This is how Neville's art of assumption becomes practical. You act, feel, and decide from the point of completion, not from the place of need. This is where transformation accelerates, because every decision you make from the end strengthens the bridge between imagination and manifestation. This is where peace replaces panic. Your mind no longer oscillates between hope and fear. It rests in the certainty of fulfillment. This is where cause and effect merge. You are no longer creating from separation, but from identity. This is where the law takes command. It mirrors not your effort, but your emotional conclusion about yourself. This is where you realize the secret rhythm of success. It beats in the heart of one who knows the outcome has already unfolded. This is how your vibration stabilizes. When the end feels more real than the present must yield. This is where your world reshapes itself. People, timing, and opportunities rearrange as if to catch up to your conviction. This is where invisible forces move. They respond to the assumption of completion like actors following a finished script. This is where your mind relaxes into mastery, because the more you practice living from the end, the more natural it becomes. This is where fulfillment gains gravity. Imagination holds you steady, unmoved by temporary appearances. This is where financial ease begins. You spend, speak, and think like one who already has. This is the essence of Neville's hidden law, to live so completely in the end that life itself rushes forward to prove you right. Think of the moment when you realize your inner dialogue is the true accountant of your life, silently recording every thought as either debt or deposit. This is where Neville's hidden wisdom reveals its precision. He taught that your outer finances are nothing but the audible echo of your inner speech. This is where awareness sharpens. Every "I can't afford," "I never have enough," or "money is hard to get" becomes a seed that blossoms into proof. This is where transformation begins, not in silence, but in the reformation of your invisible self-talk. This is where the wealthy differ. They speak to themselves as if abundance were already familiar, never foreign. This is where illusion dissolves. You see that words are not descriptions of reality but blueprints that build it. This is where power shifts. You stop speaking from lack and start conversing from possession, as if all your desires were already signed and sealed. This is where the dialogue turns divine. You begin telling yourself stories that only a wealthy mind could believe. This is how reality listens. Your subconscious doesn't judge your words. It accepts them as orders, executing each statement faithfully. This is where your self-concept evolves. Each inner affirmation adds texture to the identity of someone who always has. This is where wealth becomes language. You no longer hope for prosperity. You speak it, think it, and hear it within. This is where the unseen accountant balances the books. Every wealthy inner phrase deposits unseen currency into your field of experience. This is where the revision begins. You catch yourself mid-sentence, replacing complaint with command. This is where discipline grows. Your mind becomes the financial advisor that never stops working in your favor. This is where the rhythm changes. The more you converse with abundance, the more fluent you become in its frequency. This is where doubt loses its audience. When your inner voice refuses to repeat the old narrative, poverty has nothing left to feed on. This is where imagination becomes dialogue, not pretending, but proclaiming a new standard of thought. This is where wealth begins to echo back. You hear it in your circumstances, reflected in opportunities that seem to overhear your self-talk. This is how the law rewards persistence. Your inner words form the contracts your outer world must honor. This is where Neville's hidden law breathes. You don't have to shout your desires into existence. You only have to speak to yourself as though they already belong to you. Ask yourself what happens when faith is no longer an abstract belief, but becomes your most valuable financial asset, silently compounding interest in the unseen. This is where Neville's teaching takes on its truest meaning. Faith is not waiting and wishing. It is knowing and resting. This is where the revelation deepens. Your invisible bank account grows each time you persist in an assumption, despite appearances to the contrary. This is where the spiritual economy operates. Your feelings are deposits, your doubts are withdrawals, and the balance always reflects your dominant state. This is where the invisible math begins. Each act of belief multiplies your returns, not in theory, but through direct shifts in experience. This is where divine arithmetic takes over. The more you dare to trust in imagination, the less effort it takes to produce results. This is where the logic of faith replaces the logic of fear. You stop counting losses and start counting certainties. This is where your financial consciousness matures. You understand that faith is a spiritual currency accepted everywhere in the universe. This is where patience turns powerful. Time no longer feels like delay, but like divine incubation. This is where unseen growth occurs. Every time you refuse to doubt, you strengthen the energetic foundation that supports future wealth. This is where Neville's law becomes personal. You learn to feel the truth of abundance before it has physical evidence. This is how miracles normalize. You stop being surprised when imagination pays out dividends in unexpected ways. This is where the emotional economy stabilizes. You no longer overspend energy on worry because you've invested everything in conviction. This is where endurance becomes elegance. Faith lets you rest while reality rearranges itself to honor your belief. This is where the unseen ledger balances. Life pays precisely what your faith demands, no more, no less. This is where stillness becomes strategy. The quiet confidence that you are already provided for dissolves all anxious striving. This is where the compound effect unfolds. Each day of sustained belief builds momentum toward visible prosperity. This is how wealth becomes predictable. You no longer gamble on chance, you collect from certainty. This is where gratitude seals the deal. Thankfulness before manifestation closes the circuit between imagination and reality. This is the essence of Neville's hidden law. Faith is not hope deferred, but wealth already imagined, secured, and silently accruing interest in the vault of consciousness. Consider the possibility that every thought, every feeling, every moment of attention is a form of spending, and the currency is your inner energy. This is where Neville's hidden law sharpens its edge. Money is not only in your bank, it is in your consciousness, spent wisely or squandered carelessly. This is where awareness awakens. You begin to see that anxiety, fear, and doubt are withdrawals from the very account that funds your outer reality. This is where the shift occurs. The wealthy mind learns to conserve energy by directing it toward belief and assumption, rather than worry and complaint. This is where imagination becomes the ledger. You allocate attention to what you wish to experience, knowing that focus writes the checks that life must honor. This is where power crystallizes. You realize that every moment you feel abundance is a deposit, and every moment of scarcity thought is a debit. This is where responsibility takes root. You are no longer a passive observer. You are the accountant, the treasurer of your mental currency. This is where subtlety transforms. Small shifts in feeling, thought, and attention compound into enormous financial consequence. This is where the law works invisibly. You may see no change at first, but energy follows attention, and reality bends to match persistent focus. This is where mastery emerges. You learn to stop spending energy on fear, doubt, or envy, and redirect it toward the state of already having. This is where the hidden blueprint strengthens. The more you invest in imagination, the faster outer conditions align. This is where conscious discipline pays dividends. You make deliberate mental expenditures that yield material returns. This is where the illusion of struggle falls away. You recognize that lack is merely mismanaged attention over time. This is where inner authority grows. You spend less on what doesn't serve and more on cultivating states that produce. This is where Neville's insight shines. You do not create wealth by external effort alone, but by wise internal expenditure. This is where transformation accelerates. The compound interest of focused, persistent belief begins to manifest as real financial flow. This is where intention meets reality. You learn the timing and rhythm of mental investment. This is where alignment becomes effortless. The more careful you are with inner energy, the more life responds with abundance. This is where the currency of imagination asserts itself. You realize that every thought matters and every feeling counts. This is where the hidden law is revealed. Financial transformation is not just about earning more, but about spending your inner energy with precision, intention, and unwavering faith in abundance. Now consider this. The moment you assume a financial reality as already true, You begin the alchemical process of turning invisible belief into tangible wealth. This is where Neville's hidden law shows its brilliance. Assumption is not wishful thinking but deliberate creation, the secret crucible where imagination produces reality. This is where the transformation ignites. You stop asking if it will happen and start existing as though it has already occurred. This is where your inner world becomes laboratory. The feelings, thoughts, and sensations you maintain are the reagents, and assumption is the catalyst. This is where power whispers. You discover that persistent assumption reshapes circumstance without struggle or force. This is where the mind's chemistry unfolds. Doubt evaporates under the heat of conviction, and outer conditions must align with inner certainty. This is where mastery is forged. Every scene you imagine vividly, every detail you accept as real, compounds into the outer manifestation of your desire. This is where patience turns strategic. You understand that assumption must be maintained steadily, like a flame, until reality bends. This is where resistance melts. The universe responds not to effort, but to the unshakable presumption of fulfillment. This is where the hidden law rewards courage. The bolder your assumption, the faster the transmutation of imagination into form. This is where identity merges with desire. You no longer pursue wealth, you embody it, and your being becomes the vessel through which abundance flows. This is where alignment accelerates. The more precise your assumption, the fewer obstacles remain in its path. This is where action becomes inspired. You move in ways that feel natural because your state is already complete. This is where reality conforms. The world mirrors back the inner assumption with astonishing fidelity. This is where imagination proves itself. The invisible landscape of belief reshapes visible circumstances. This is where confidence replaces calculation. You trust the process, knowing it cannot fail when assumption is steadfast. This is where the rhythm of creation is revealed. One persistent assumption after another compounds into inevitable manifestation. This is where wealth is no longer external. It is a reflection of the consistent state you occupy. This is where the secret of Neville's alchemy is finally clear. The law of assumption does not negotiate, it manifests. This is where the law completes its cycle. Financial transformation occurs not by pursuit, but by the sustained, conscious assumption of the reality you wish to inhabit. Picture for a moment that the harder you chase money, the further it seems to slip away. And yet the more effortless your inner assumption, the faster wealth flows. This is where Neville's hidden law challenges conventional wisdom. Financial transformation is not earned through toil, but cultivated through precise imagining. This is where the paradox sharpens. You must act, yet your action flows naturally from being, not from striving. This is where tension dissolves. Effortless riches arise when you rest fully in the state of already having. This is where patience becomes potency. You no longer force outcomes, you align with the unseen currents that carry abundance. This is where imagination replaces labor. The act of living as if wealthy creates more result than any external struggle. This is where resistance retreats. The universe responds to being more than doing, to feeling more than planning. This is where subtlety transforms. The slightest shift in belief produces exponential changes in your outer conditions. This is where identity commands reality. You stop asking for riches and start embodying them, and life cannot help but comply. This is where timing synchronizes effortlessly. The unseen law orchestrates circumstances while you maintain inner certainty. This is where focus becomes a magnet. Each concentrated feeling of wealth attracts experiences that mirror it. This is where the hidden law proves itself. The more you feel abundance, the less you have to chase it. This is where energy aligns. You move naturally toward opportunities because your being is already congruent with the outcome. This is where clarity replaces chaos. You no longer measure success by effort, but by the consistency of your inner state. This is where transformation accelerates. The effortless assumption carries its own momentum, bending reality without resistance. This is where faith becomes fluid. You trust the unseen to deliver because you know the inner state cannot lie. This is where the paradox fulfills itself. Doing less externally while imagining fully internally creates more visible results than relentless action. This is where the cinematic moment emerges. You witness the effortless manifestation of abundance, as if the world itself were conspiring in your favor. This is where Neville's secret becomes tangible. The outer world is always the reflection of inner ease and certainty. This is where you finally understand the path to financial transformation is paradoxically paved by feeling, being, and imagining, not by struggling, planning, or chasing. Envision a life where wealth is not a goal, but a current you swim in daily, where every decision, thought, and action flows from the certainty of abundance. This is where Neville's hidden law sharpens. By living in the state of already rich, you signal the universe that scarcity no longer applies to you. This is where the transformation begins. Your outer world bends to the inner reality you have fully embraced. This is where identity and fortune merge. You are no longer practicing wealth. You are wealth itself, radiating it through presence alone. This is where resistance crumbles. The inner conviction of abundance leaves no room for doubt, fear, or hesitation. This is where time loses its tension. You no longer wait for results because the state of richness is your present reality. This is where confidence escalates. The more you inhabit the feeling of already having, the less the world can contradict it. This is where imagination acts as magnet. Every action, conversation, and opportunity aligns with the vibrational signal of prosperity. This is where inner consistency becomes strategy. The universe responds to sustained being, not erratic pursuit. This is where the hidden current flows. Your thoughts and feelings broadcast a financial frequency that organizes circumstances effortlessly. This is where miracles take form. Unexpected opportunities, sudden insights, and effortless connections appear to support your state. This is where subtle mastery reveals itself. You no longer push against resistance. You move as if abundance is your natural environment. This is where inner calm becomes leverage. The quieter your mind, the faster outer wealth crystallizes. This is where the law honors conviction. The world cannot help but reflect the state you inhabit fully. This is where persistence compounds. The longer you sustain the already rich feeling, the more your reality must catch up. This is where faith transforms into proof. You see evidence of wealth everywhere because you are tuned to perceive it. This is where financial freedom emerges. It is no longer conditional on effort, but a natural expression of inner certainty. This is where imagination solidifies identity. Wealth is no longer something you seek, but the person you are. This is where Neville's law completes the circle. The state of already rich is the master key, turning imagination into undeniable financial reality. This is where your world becomes inevitable. The person who feels wealthy cannot help but live in a world that reflects it. Think of the moment when you realize that every coin, every opportunity, and every transaction is a reflection of who you believe yourself to be, and nothing more. This is where Neville's hidden law clarifies the unseen mechanics. Outer wealth mirrors your inner self-concept, responding with perfect fidelity. This is where insight cuts deep. You cannot manipulate circumstances externally without first transforming the image you hold internally. This is where identity becomes currency. The richer your self-concept, the more abundant the mirror reflects. This is where the subtle law operates. Money, connections, and opportunities are never independent. They are reflections of the state of consciousness you maintain. This is where resistance fades. The mirror cannot show lack when you see yourself as already fulfilled. This is where the paradigm shifts. You stop adjusting the outside world and begin polishing the internal image that creates it. This is where mastery begins. Every thought, feeling, and assumption is now a deliberate stroke on the canvas of your outer reality. This is where transformation accelerates. The more vivid and consistent your self-image, the faster the mirror aligns with it. This is where the law rewards precision. Ambiguity in identity produces ambiguity in wealth. Clarity produces clarity. This is where imagination gains authority. You can script your own financial story by first inhabiting the identity that naturally commands it. This is where subtle power emerges. Others respond to your reflection because energy radiates from authenticity. This is where alignment becomes effortless. You are no longer struggling for wealth. The mirror simply shows what you already are. This is where the hidden law proves faithful. Outer circumstances must obey the internal assumption whether you like it or not. This is where faith and action converge. Your inspired steps are now guided by an inner self-concept of abundance. This is where transformation solidifies. The mirror reflects a person who is secure, capable, and wealthy in essence. This is where clarity replaces chaos. You finally understand that changing yourself internally is the only true path to financial change externally. This is where results become inevitable. The mirror cannot deny the image it has been given. This is where Neville's principle resonates. The world outside is never separate from the world inside. This is where the law crowns its power. The wealth mirror never lies, and by mastering the reflection, you master your financial reality. Suppose you discover that the past is not fixed, that every memory of financial failure, scarcity, or disappointment can be revised to serve your present abundance. This is where Neville's hidden law unveils its quiet power. By imagining past events as you wish they had occurred, you alter the emotional imprint that shaped your financial patterns. This is where transformation begins. You stop being haunted by old debts, missed opportunities, or mistakes, replacing them with feelings of success, ease, and provision. This is where subtle alchemy unfolds. What was once a source of limitation becomes a seedbed for prosperity. This is where inner authority grows. You claim mastery over past events by living them as corrected in imagination. This is where energy is liberated. Each revised memory releases mental and emotional currency previously locked in scarcity. This is where the ripple effect starts. Your present decisions are influenced by empowered memories rather than disempowering ones. This is where cause and effect invert. The outer financial reality begins to reflect the revised narrative of inner experience. This is where imagination asserts dominion. Repetition of revision solidifies the new pattern into your subconscious mind. This is where the hidden law rewards precision. Vivid, emotionally charged revisions produce the strongest manifestations. This is where confidence replaces regret. You no longer carry the weight of past financial mistakes. This is where creativity blooms. The mind freed from old limitations can imagine new opportunities without resistance. This is where timing becomes fluid. The universe adjusts to the revised script, bringing circumstances into alignment. This is where transformation accelerates. Small revisions compound, reshaping your self-concept and outer wealth in tandem. This is where the inner scene commands the outer world. The life you imagine differently begins to appear as inevitable. This is where faith finds proof. Your actions and results align seamlessly with the revised memory. This is where mastery is felt. The past no longer dictates the future. You dictate both. This is where Neville's principle becomes tangible. Financial freedom emerges as the direct consequence of consciously rewritten memories. This is where the law completes its cycle. Revision is not denial, but reclamation of your creative authority. This is where abundance solidifies. The story you now live internally manifests faithfully externally. Envision a reality where every dollar, every deal, and every financial opportunity exists simultaneously in two markets, the seen and the unseen, and the latter governs the former. This is where Neville's hidden law illuminates the truth. The world you perceive is merely the shadow of a deeper, invisible economy of belief, imagination, and assumption. This is where understanding sharpens. You cannot master outer wealth without first mastering the inner currents that shape it. This is where cause and effect reverse. The unseen market of thought, feeling, and conviction dictates the visible transactions you encounter. This is where power flows quietly. You influence outcomes not through manipulation, but by aligning with the unseen principles of creation. This is where patience gains leverage. What you hold firmly in imagination eventually materializes in the marketplace of reality. This is where attention becomes currency. Each thought, each feeling, each belief trades invisibly until it manifests externally. This is where mastery reveals subtlety. You are not competing in the world of scarcity, but orchestrating in the world of infinite possibilities. This is where the mirror principle reasserts itself. The seen world always reflects the unseen state of consciousness. This is where clarity turns effort into elegance. You no longer chase opportunities, you attract them as natural extensions of your inner market. This is where imagination wields authority. The scenes you persist in mentally dictate the patterns you experience materially. This is where alignment accelerates. actions taken from a state of inner abundance produce disproportionate outer returns. This is where resistance fades. The invisible market cannot resist a mind fully invested in its own prosperity. This is where faith compounds. Each assumption, each visualization, each feeling is an investment earning interest in the unseen ledger. This is where timing synchronizes effortlessly. The universe unfolds events in perfect harmony with the internal state you maintain. This is where transformation solidifies. The more consistently you operate in the unseen market, the more predictable and effortless the outer results. This is where abundance becomes inevitable. The inner economy dictates the outer, leaving scarcity powerless to linger. This is where the hidden law demonstrates elegance. The world of form obeys the architecture of consciousness without exception. This is where mastery completes its arc. Financial transformation is not found in the hustle of the visible market, but in the careful cultivation of the unseen one. This is where Neville's secret is revealed. The outer world is merely a reflection, a ledger, and a marketplace of the inner imagination you consistently inhabit. Ask yourself what happens when you treat your imagination as the most valuable investment portfolio you will ever own, compounding returns in ways unseen but inevitable. This is where Neville's hidden law comes alive. Every vivid scene you imagine, every assumption you persist in, deposits energy that the universe eventually translates into form. This is where transformation accelerates. The consistent reinvestment of belief multiplies results faster than any external effort could achieve. This is where power whispers. You no longer gamble with chance. You invest in certainty by living as though your desire is already fulfilled. This is where patience turns into profit. Each sustained imaginal act strengthens the infrastructure of future wealth. This is where imagination gains authority. Repeated visualization becomes a channel through which abundance flows naturally. This is where faith earns dividends. The more convincingly you feel and assume, the faster outer circumstances align. This is where the unseen ledger records each transaction. No act of belief is wasted, no effort of assumption ignored. This is where mastery emerges. You learn to allocate imagination deliberately, directing energy toward the outcomes you truly desire. This is where resistance dissolves. The universe has no choice but to respond to the persistent signal you broadcast. This is where identity and action converge. You begin to act in ways consistent with the wealth you are already imagining. This is where alignment multiplies. The more you invest internally, the fewer obstacles appear externally. This is where the cycle feeds itself. Success in imagination breeds confidence, which fuels further belief, which produces tangible results. This is where energy compounds. The invisible returns of repeated assumption accelerate manifestation exponentially. This is where the cinematic rhythm unfolds. The unseen portfolio of your mind orchestrates visible abundance like a master conductor. This is where scarcity loses authority. Long-held patterns of lack are replaced by the steady accumulation of imaginal capital. This is where intuition becomes investment strategy. You naturally sense which thoughts and feelings carry the highest yield. This is where the law honors precision. The richer and more detailed the assumption, the greater the tangible payoff. This is where Neville's principle is undeniable. The secret of financial transformation is in the consistent, deliberate reinvestment of your imagination. This is where reality bends to imagination. The cycle of imaginal investment ensures that what is persistently felt and assumed inevitably manifests in form. Envision a reality where your inner state of wealth acts like a magnet, silently drawing opportunities, resources, and people into alignment with your assumed abundance. This is where Neville's hidden law reveals its subtle genius. Outer circumstances cannot resist the energy of someone who lives fully as though financially fulfilled. This is where transformation quickens. You no longer chase wealth because your inner magnet pulls it effortlessly toward you. This is where identity and attraction merge. You embody the reality you wish to see, and the world rearranges itself to match. This is where subtle forces operate. Chance meetings, sudden insights, and unexpected offers are simply the universe's response to your internal frequency. This is where focus amplifies. Each thought and feeling tuned to prosperity strengthens the magnetic field of your inner wealth. This is where action becomes inspired. The steps you take feel effortless because they are guided by the energy you consistently radiate. This is where resistance wanes. The universe yields to the vibration of abundance, not to effort or struggle. This is where clarity sharpens. You begin to distinguish between energy that attracts and energy that repels, choosing only that which aligns with your state. This is where mastery deepens. Persistent feeling of wealth rewires your subconscious to reflect abundance naturally. This is where patience becomes strategic. The more stable your inner magnet, the more reliably the outer world responds. This is where imagination exerts authority. Every scene you maintain in consciousness strengthens the pull of prosperity. This is where alignment becomes inevitable. The people, situations, and opportunities that mirror your inner wealth appear as if drawn by invisible threads. This is where persistence compounds. The longer you sustain the inner state, the stronger the outer manifestations. This is where faith becomes tangible. You witness coincidences and synchronicities that confirm your assumed reality. This is where energy consolidates. Inner wealth creates coherence that resonates through every aspect of your life. This is where the hidden law proves faithful. Outer abundance is a natural consequence of consistent inner richness. This is where influence grows silently. Your magnetism changes how the world responds without a single word spoken. This is where Neville's secret shines. The power to transform finances lies less in action and more in the persistent cultivation of inner wealth. This is where your reality bends effortlessly. The magnetic field of assumption ensures that what you feel internally must manifest externally. Can you imagine that every financial opportunity, every timely connection, and every unexpected windfall is guided by unseen hands responding directly to your inner state of assumption? This is where Neville's hidden law orchestrates the invisible symphony. Your thoughts and feelings act as signals that attract circumstances perfectly aligned with your beliefs. This is where transformation dances into reality. What seems like coincidence is actually the precise unfolding of your inner convictions. This is where timing synchronizes effortlessly. The universe mirrors the rhythm of your imagination, delivering results exactly when your inner state is ready to receive. This is where alignment becomes inevitable. The more consistently you assume wealth, the more these invisible hands direct reality to match. This is where patience blends with trust. You no longer manipulate outcomes because the law of assumption works silently and flawlessly. This is where energy communicates. The subtleties of your belief ripple outward, orchestrating events beyond your conscious effort. This is where clarity replaces struggle. You see that external obstacles are merely cues for refining the internal state. This is where mastery expands. You begin to recognize patterns of synchronicity, understanding them as confirmations of inner alignment. This is where influence flows unseen. The people, places, and events that appear to shape your financial world are responding to the energy you emit. This is where imagination proves its power. Each scene, vividly assumed, guides circumstance as naturally as gravity guides a falling leaf. This is where action is inspired. You move in accordance with the currents of alignment rather than blind effort. This is where scarcity loses authority. The invisible hands will never serve lack when abundance is consistently assumed. This is where transformation accelerates. The more attuned you are to synchronicity, the more effortless your manifestations become. This is where persistence compounds. The signals you send through imagination create a self-reinforcing cycle of wealth. This is where faith solidifies. The invisible forces always confirm what your inner state dictates. This is where the law operates elegantly. Outer events become reflections of the internal harmony you maintain. This is where subtle mastery reveals itself. You influence reality without controlling it, guiding it gently through assumption. This is where Neville's hidden law becomes palpable. The unseen is always responding, and the richer your inner state, the more perfectly it arranges the world around you. This is where your financial transformation completes a new dimension. Synchronicity ensures that what you feel internally is echoed flawlessly in every aspect of your life. Think of the moment when you realize that wealth is not a destination, but a continuous current that flows effortlessly through the mind of one who consistently assumes abundance. This is where Neville's hidden law demonstrates its elegance. The inner expectation of riches creates an unbroken stream of opportunities, ideas, and resources in the outer world. This is where transformation stabilizes. When you maintain a steady assumption, reality responds in kind, producing a rhythm of financial ease. This is where energy aligns. The longer you sustain belief in abundance, the stronger the flow becomes, like a river deepening over time. This is where patience turns into leverage. The current moves unseen, yet nothing can stop it once the inner state is fixed. This is where focus gains power. Each sustained feeling of wealth amplifies the flow, attracting circumstances that reflect your assumption. This is where action becomes inspired. The steps you take are guided by momentum already created in consciousness. This is where resistance dissolves. The river of expectation cannot be blocked by doubt or external scarcity. This is where identity merges with reality. You are no longer waiting for abundance. You are the continuous flow itself. This is where subtle forces respond. The universe conspires silently to reflect your unwavering inner expectation. This is where timing synchronizes effortlessly. The current brings resources exactly when your inner state aligns with their arrival. This is where clarity replaces chaos. You understand that wealth is maintained by persistent assumption, not frantic pursuit. This is where imagination exercises authority. Every scene you feel, every sensation you embody, reinforces the stream of abundance. This is where confidence becomes magnetic. The continuous flow draws not only money, but opportunities and allies into harmony with your state. This is where transformation compounds. The longer the inner expectation endures, the greater the outer manifestation becomes. This is where faith solidifies into proof. The unbroken flow of circumstances confirms the power of assumption. This is where mastery feels effortless. You no longer labor for wealth, you allow the current to carry it. This is where Neville's hidden law fulfills itself. The outer world cannot help but mirror the uninterrupted flow of internal abundance. This is where financial freedom becomes natural. Expectation is the faucet, and the universe pours forth without limit. This is where your imagination and feeling fuse. The continuous flow of assumption guarantees that abundance is no longer conditional, but inevitable. Ask yourself what it would feel like to awaken each day, fully immersed in the consciousness of wealth, where every thought, feeling, and action reflects the mastery of Neville's hidden law. This is where the ultimate transformation completes. The inner state you have cultivated over every prior step now governs every aspect of your financial reality. This is where consistency becomes power. Your daily practice of assumption, imagination, and feeling produces a steady stream of abundance without interruption. This is where alignment becomes effortless. You no longer struggle against circumstance because your inner reality commands outer reflection with absolute fidelity. This is where freedom expands. Time, money, and opportunity all flow toward you because your consciousness has assumed ownership. This is where subtlety governs. The universe no longer tests your faith, it mirrors the state you inhabit naturally. This is where synchronicity becomes ordinary. People, resources, and circumstances appear as if by invisible design, all attuned to your inner wealth. This is where identity solidifies. You are no longer the seeker but the embodiment of the abundant life you imagined. This is where action feels inspired rather than forced. Every move you make resonates with the rhythm of inner certainty. This is where persistence compounds. The years of consistent inner practice now yield effortless, visible results. This is where energy flows with precision. No effort is wasted, and every thought and feeling is an investment in further abundance. This is where imagination asserts authority. The scenes you hold, the states you inhabit, dictate the unfolding of every opportunity. This is where resistance disappears. The law of assumption now operates without friction, producing results that seem miraculous, but are perfectly natural. This is where clarity reigns. You perceive cause and effect in reverse, knowing that inner reality shapes outer experience, not vice versa. This is where faith manifests tangibly. Every imagined success, every assumed abundance, becomes a living part of your life. This is where mastery becomes habitual. The hidden law is no longer a technique, but the very fabric of your being. This is where the cinematic rhythm of life unfolds. Opportunities, wealth, and growth appear seamlessly, guided by the inner state you maintain. This is where gratitude seals the law. By living daily in appreciation, you reinforce the abundance that surrounds you. This is where Neville's hidden law proves complete. You are the conscious creator of your financial reality, and the universe mirrors your mastery perfectly. This is where transformation is permanent. Financial freedom, prosperity, and ease are no longer fleeting events, but the natural consequence of the life you embody.